Welcome to CyberTheo. In today's tutorial, we're into the philosophical world of Immanuel Kant, a towering figure whose ideas have shaped modern Western philosophy. Kant's work is known for being challenging, but don't worry, we'll break it down step by step. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer grasp of his contributions to epistemology, ethics, and metaphysics, and understand why he remains so influential. Let's get started. Background on Kant. Immanuel Kant was born in 1724 in Königsberg, Prussia, modern-day Kaliningrad, Russia. He spent most of his life in this city, where he worked as a professor of philosophy. Kant lived during the Enlightenment, a period characterized by a focus on reason, science, and skepticism of religious authority. His major works include the Critique of Pure Reason, 1781, the Critique of Practical Reason, 1788, and the Critique of Judgment, 1790. These are often referred to as Kant's three critiques, and they form the core of his philosophical system. Kant sought to answer fundamental questions about human knowledge, ethics, and the nature of reality. He challenged the views of earlier philosophers, like the empiricists, who argued that all knowledge comes from experience, and the rationalists, who believed that reason alone could provide us with knowledge. His work bridges these two perspectives. Kant's theory of knowledge, epistemology. Kant's main question was, how is knowledge possible? He wanted to understand the limits and scope of human understanding. Transcendental Idealism. Kant argued that the mind actively structures our experiences. Rather than passively receiving information from the world, the mind imposes categories and concepts, like time, space, and causality, onto the sensory data it receives. The world as it is, noumena, is unknowable to us. We can only know the world as it appears to us, phenomena. For example, when you look at a tree, you don't experience the tree as it exists independently of your perception. Instead, you experience your mind-structured perception of the tree. This revolutionary idea challenged the notion that we can have direct access to reality. A priori versus a posteriori knowledge. A priori knowledge is independent of experience, like mathematical truths, e.g., 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, or the concept of causality. A posteriori knowledge is derived from experience, such as knowing that the sky is blue after observing it. Kant's contribution was showing how a priori concepts, like space and time, are necessary for us to even experience the world in the first place. Synthetic a priori judgments. Kant introduced the concept of synthetic a priori judgments, which combine the necessity of a priori knowledge with the new information provided by experience. For example, every event has a cause, is a synthetic a priori judgment. It's something we know without needing experience, but it's also not a purely logical truth like all bachelors are unmarried. Kant's ethics, the categorical imperative. Kant's ethical system is based on reason and autonomy rather than emotion or consequences. His most famous idea is the categorical imperative, a universal moral law that applies to all rational beings. The categorical imperative. Kant formulated this principle in several ways. Here are two of the most important. Formula of universal law. Act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. In other words, you should act in a way that you can imagine everyone else acting without contradiction. If the action can't be universalized, e.g., lying, since if everyone lied, trust would collapse, then it's morally wrong. Kant's ethics emphasize the importance of duty and the intrinsic value of moral actions. He believed that an action is truly moral only when it's done out of duty, not out of self-interest or emotional inclination. For example, helping someone because it's the right thing to do, rather than because it makes you feel good, is a moral act. Perfect versus imperfect duties. Perfect duties are actions that must always be followed, e.g., don't lie, don't kill. Imperfect duties allow for some flexibility, like the duty to help others, which doesn't require you to always be helping but to do so when reasonably possible. Kant's metaphysics, the nature of reality. Kant's metaphysics deals with the fundamental nature of reality and our ability to understand it. Space and time as forms of intuition. Kant argued that space and time are not things that exist independently of our perception. Instead, they are the forms through which we perceive the world. They are necessary conditions for us to experience anything at all. We can't imagine anything existing outside space and time because they are the very frameworks of our perception. The categories of understanding. Kant identified a set of categories, like causality, substance, and unity, that the mind uses to organize experiences. These categories are not derived from experience but are imposed by the mind to make sense of experience. Noumenal versus phenomenal worlds. The phenomenal world is the world as we experience it, shaped by our mental structures, space, time, and the categories. The noumenal world is the world as it is in itself, independent of our experience. While Kant believed we could never fully know the noumenal world, he argued that its existence is necessary to explain the limits of our knowledge. This distinction between noumena and phenomena challenges the traditional idea that we can directly access reality. For Kant, all knowledge is limited to the way the world appears to us. Key takeaway. Kant's philosophy transformed our understanding of knowledge, ethics, and reality. His Transcendental Idealism showed how the mind actively shapes experience, while his Categorical Imperative provided a framework for universal moral laws based on duty. His work continues to influence philosophy, ethics, and even modern science. Conclusion. Immanuel Kant's philosophy remains a cornerstone of modern thought, influencing not only philosophers but also fields like psychology, political theory, and even science. His ideas challenge us to reflect on how we perceive the world, what it means to act morally, and the limits of human knowledge. By understanding Kant, we gain deeper insight into the frameworks that shape our thinking and behavior. Whether you're exploring his theory of knowledge or grappling with the categorical imperative, Kant's work offers invaluable tools for understanding complex philosophical questions that are still relevant today. Thanks for diving into Kant's ideas with me today. Be sure to check out the additional resources linked below for further study. That wraps up our deep dive into Immanuel Kant's philosophy. We've explored his groundbreaking ideas about knowledge, ethics, and reality. If you found this video helpful, check my links below for further resources on Kant's work. Don't forget to like, comment, and consider subscribing for more philosophy breakdowns, tech tips, and tutorials. Thanks for watching CyberTheo.